Hello everyone and welcome back to Inside ArtScroll, where the books you read and the people who write them come to life. Today I am privileged to be joined by Rabbi Chaim Aryeh Zev Ginzberg, author of the brand new Shailos Uteshuvos Divrei Chachamim. Thank you, Rabbi Ginzberg, for being here.
An honor.
I introduce this program as speaking to people who write the books. Now this isn't a book, this is a hashkafah sefer, and it's unique that ArtScroll has published this because it's an all-Hebrew sefer,
right.
And there are only select personalities who are zeicha to publish Hebrew svarim under the ArtScroll umbrella, and here you are with this expanded edition of Shailos Uteshuvos Divrei Chachamim, a wealth of information of decades and decades of Shailos Uteshuvos that you yourself heard and received from gedolei hador. So first of all, Mazel Tov on the release. It's a big achievement. I know you told me off camera how much time you spent on this, literally years, years poring over the tshuvos and so on and so forth. So take our viewers back to the genesis of this sefer and how it started and how you established close relationships with the gedolim who are quoted in this sefer. And I'll just mention quickly, Rabbi Moshe Feinstein, Rabbi Yaakov Kamenetsky, Rav Shach, Rabbi Yashiv, Rav Scheinberg. You'll tell me if I left out any other prominent personalities.
Shlomo Zalman,
Auerbach, Stipler. So how did this whole project start?
Okay. It's really started not a handful of years ago, but very long, a long time ago. When I was really, I would say it started at the age between 14 and 16. And I'll explain it as I explain in the sefer itself. I had a Rebbe who was, he was the mashgiach in yeshiva Chafetz Chaim. His name was Rabbi Chaim Shmuel Neumann, Zechrono Livracha, Zechrono Tzadik Livracha. And I was a young boy. I grew up in his home. One of his sons is my oldest, dearest friend. And we decided, we should learn together. And I was very honored. I was a high school boy, and all of a sudden the mashgiach wants to learn with me, prepare a share with me. So for about 2 years, from the age of 14 to 16, we learned 2-3 times a week, mostly in his house, in his home, sometimes early in the morning, and it was a great experience. But Rabbi Neumann had his hobby in life was halacha and getting to know the gedolim, meeting them, asking Shailos to the gedolim. There was a small group of Talmidei Chacham Muflagim that would go to Rav Moshe every Friday, every Erev Shabbos, and they would, after davening and MTJ, ask him Shailos and learn from his hadracha. Some of Rav Moshe's closest Talmidim, biggest Talmidim, he was one of them. And of course with Rav Henrik Leibowitz, who was his Rebbe, there was Chafetz Chaim. And he would go and he would come back enthused and energized. And pretty much every single time he would come in, and before we start learning, he would just, with excitement, he would share with me what he heard. Most of the time I didn't even understand what he was talking about. I didn't know the sugyas, I didn't know the topics that he was referring to, but he would tell me, and this is what Moshe said, this is what he heard from the Rosh Yeshiva. And the excitement in him was incredibly infectious. So I think that probably generated with me a great interest and desire to do a kind of similar thing, to learn halacha and to see what the gedolim have to say. But then he set me up, and that changed my entire life. I went to Eretz Yisroel when I was 16 years old to learn in yeshiva Chafetz Chaim, and I was never there before. This was in 1974. I went to Pesach Zman in 1974. And I was there maybe 2 weeks, and I get a letter from Rabbi Neumann. The old days they used to send, there was no email, there was no phones, it was the old type of, you write on each side of it, those overnight, those airmails that they used to have, those international letters. And he sent me with a request. And he explained the following situation. In yeshiva, he was the one who dealt with all the Shailos that people would come to him. And there was a cold fellow who came to him with a very sad story that his wife was now expecting their third child, but she had miscarried the earlier two ones, and now she was pregnant the third time. And she was incredibly stressed and panicking that it would happen again. And she heard from somebody that there was a makubal in Eretz Yisroel who gives water to women that are expecting, and it's a shmir. You drink this water, you make a bracha. It's a shmir on not having a miscarriage. She told her husband she needs to have that water, and it was like weighing on her that this was the one thing that was going to help protect her. Husband didn't know what he's talking about, never heard this thing, and he went to the Rabbi Chaim, told him the situation. What should I do? My wife is like, so he said, well, I'm going to get you the water. We have to give it to your wife. That's what she needs. We're going to get her that water. And I know someone who's going to do it. And he sent me this letter that I should please go and get this water. I said, why? Like, what are you talking about? So I made some inquiries, and this was referring to, at the time, to the Babi Sali, in the Tivot. Those days, Yerushalayim to Netivot was about a 6-hour bus ride. And go there, like I didn't know what I'm supposed to do. I didn't speak a word of Hebrew. I just got off the boat. So I went to my mashgiach of the yeshiva. There was Aram Kinarik, Zechon Levracha. And I said to him, showed him the letter. I said, I need to do this. So he said to me, you're going to, entire day, 6 hours back to come back. Like, how could you do that? So I said, it's a chesed to this woman who's waiting, and Rabbi Chaim asked me to do it. So he was a small man, he was a short stature, and he said to me, I'll never forget, I'm too small to carry on my shoulders this decision to let a yeshiva bochur take an entire day, at least one day, if not more, to go and do this. It's a chesed, yes, but I was too small. I said, so what should I do? He said, go to Rabbi Yashav and ask him what to do. I said, who's Rabbi Yashav? I never heard his name. And by the way, at that time, 99% of the world didn't know Rabbi Yashav.
This is in the 70s.
This is in 74, with just the inner circle of Talmidei Chacham Yerushalayim. No Americans that came to Eretz Yisroel would go to Rabbi Yashav. No one ever heard of him at the time. I said, what's Rabbi Yashav? Who's Rabbi Yashav? He said, Posek Hador. I said, well, where would I find him? In Mei Sharim. I had no idea where Mei Sharim was. I had never been there. I didn't know anything. So he said, during lunchtime, I'm going to send one of the older bochurim to take you to Rabbi Yashav. I said, how do I even communicate with him? He said, I didn't speak Hebrew, you can speak Yiddish to him. So I just thought I was intrigued by the idea. I went, and he took me, went to Mei Sharim. Just walking the streets of Mei Sharim was, to me, a step into a different time zone. Sure. You know, I was like, the whole experience was, and we go into Rabbi Yashav's home. In those days, there was no appointment. You just walk right into the house. We came in and sitting there learning. And I was so taken with him. When he looked up at us, it's a kedusha on his face. I was just like, I was speechless for me. And I presented the question. And I explained to him what happened. And I go, and my mashgiach said that he can't take upon that Aryeh. He said, you're the man. I should go to you. What should I do? So Rabbi Yashav took the question very seriously. And he said to me, well, I don't know this individual personally. There is a thing in Chazal that tzaddik goes to HaKadosh Baruch Hu Yikayim. If a tzaddik says something, you do it. In his word, Hashem fulfills it. Mm-hmm. I don't know who this person is personally. I never met him, never learned with him, never heard a share from him to tell you that that is nichlal, what Chazal say tzaddik gozer. But I'll tell you an Eitzah Tova. There's someone in Bnei Brak, a Yid, who's nichlal in what, inclusive when Chazal says tzaddik gozer, they're referring to that person. And his name is the Stipler Gaon. And it's only an hour away. By cab, you could take a shaywood for an hour. You can go there and back.
His mechutin.
So I didn't know it at the time.
Uh-huh.
And he said to me, if you go, he says, and if you go to him, he says, I would tell you, and he tells you, drink this cup of water in the Bia Skula, I would suggest you don't leave over one drop. So Stipler, everybody knew of. Every yeshiva bochur knew of the Stipler. And I said to him, well, that's great, but I understand that he doesn't hear, that he's hard of hearing, he's deaf. So how am I going to communicate with him? I'll give you a letter. And Yeshua sat down, took a letter out, and wrote a letter, introduction for me to go in. And he gave me the letter. Only after I walked out and I looked at the letter and I saw Mukutani, I realized it's Mukutanim. I didn't even know at the time. Anyway, I came back, I told him Mashgiach, he says, go to the
Stipler.
100% you should go to the Stipler. You have a psak from the gedolei hador from Rabbi Yashav. So I come to the house. I went to Bnei Brak. I come to the house. I get directed where Steipel lives. I come into the house, and I knock on the door, and his daughter answered. He's not seeing anybody today. So I took out the letter, and I showed the letter. She took the letter. She closed the door, and she waited outside a few minutes. All of a sudden, the door opens. Steipel was by the door, holding the letter. Come inside. And the best way I explained, I wrote down, and I explained to him. So he said, I'm very schwach, I'm very weak. I don't really have the koyach to give a bracha. So go to my son. This is 1974. So I said, your son? Your son. So like, I said, Rabbi Yosef said, you're the man. Like, what do you mean the son? Like, he wanted you. Got my son, his brachas on Makuyim. Told me this in 1974. So he had his grandson who lived with him to walk me over to where Rabbi Chaim was. And I went there the first time I met Rabbi Chaim. It was, again, you walked right into the house and just sit down with him, talk to him like it was like anybody in the street. And told him the situation my father said. He gave a bracha. So, and on that cab ride back to Yerushalayim, I was hooked. I said, to have an opportunity to interact with these incredible, special, holy people, a 16-year-old boy from America, was able to go in and out, interact, and ask Shailos. I said, I'm going to do this again.
What did he say about the water, by the way?
Rabbi
Chaim, did he say anything
so
about
Chaim
the water?
Didn't even know. We just got just the idea. He gave a bracha.
I gave a bracha.
It ends up that I was Baruch Hashem Zoka to get a bracha from the Steipler for her, from Chaim, and someone was going, I did get the water and was able to send the water. There's an epilogue to this story, by the way, that we have to jump about 24, 25 years. I get an invitation to a wedding. And I don't know neither the Chassan family or the College family. I just don't know who they are. So, and then there's a note inside, please, they look forward, please, I should be there for the chuppah. Like, now I'm intrigued. I mean, I don't know the name, I don't know the cousin, I know the Kala, I know the families. Baruch Hashem, I go to a lot of simchas. And with a note to come, I just felt I had to show up. So I come, and I come to the cousin. Sometimes maybe you don't recognize a name. I look at the cousin, look at the father. I go into the Kala, look at the Kala, look at Herma. Now I'm really intrigued. The only one I knew in the whole place was the caterer. I knew the caterer. So, anyway, I sit down. All of a sudden, for bracha achrita, I get called up for bracha achrita. And I was like, what is going on over here? And I go up, and as I go up, take the coast to make the bracha, the mother of the chassan steps in front of me and says, do you know who the chassan is? So, I'm sorry, I don't. She says, the chassan was the child that was born when you sent the water from Eretz Yisroel, the Baba Sali, and the brachas that you got from Rabbi Chaim, from a Steipler and Rabbi Chaim. Baruch Hashem, this was the son that was born. Wow. And he's getting married tonight. And we wanted you to come to Chusti, you should get a bracha. Baruch Hashem, they have other children also, but I was absolutely, nothing to do with my schus, the schus of the gedolei Torah. But so this Rabbi Neumann was really, and that's why this sefer that I put out, and this is really, I'd done this many years ago, but his specific sefer, Rabbi Neumann passed away maybe 10 years ago, that I have a little biography about him, a few pages written by his family about him, and quote some of the Shailos that he heard from Rabbi Moshe, and it was all done because I really felt that he's the catalyst. He was the person who that set me on this motion. And with that, going to Eretz Yisroel, I would go in and go out and ask Shailos, and then it came for actually a period of about 18 months that I lived in Eretz Yisroel, that all the Americans from all the yeshivas would bring their Shailos to me, from the mayor, from Yeshiva Torah Chaim. Not that Torah Chaim didn't exist then, but it was that time the yeshiva that American Mekaz Torah, Itri. They would come, bring me the Shailos that the Baruchim had, and I would go with those Shailos, and I would go to ask the gedolim. And I would ask the same gedolim, the same question. Different gedolim, the same question. Of Shlomo Zalman, Rabbi Yasher, of Scheinberg, to see how, how each one thought, and then we go back. What about this? What about that? I can hear how they thought of the other's psak and back and forth. And everything that I went to, I wrote down.
And this was all when you were a bochur still?
Bochur, and
then later as a younger man also?
Most of it when I was a bochur.
Wow.
And everything I went to, I would write down.
I was going to ask you, when you came home, you would immediately sit down and write it down?
So first, when I was there, I always had, because it was Shabbos, I always had a pad and paper with me, and I would quickly jot down the Rashi Prakim, and then I would write it. I would write it up as soon as I got back, sit down while it was still fresh. Often I went with tape recorders, and the tape, and they'll play back the tape later. And a big thing was, when I was in America, when I would send back tapes of conversations with Rav Shalom or Yashav, it was like a Yom Tov. To him, it was a Yom Tov. It was he had a Sudas Yom Tov. He put on his Shabbos uniform. He was so appreciative. But so I would tape it. As a matter of fact, it's interesting. Yashav, every time I go in, the Rebbetzin al Shalom would make me close the tape recorder. Her thing was that we'll go out and tape something that he says right now, maybe a week from now, he had a different opinion, different change of heart, or different. So she didn't want it to go out on a tape. So Yashav didn't mind. So I remember I came in one time on Motzei Shabbos, and I walked in, and he looks at me. Rebbetzin not here. You could put out the tape recorder, So that was it. So I was zocher to actually not just go ask, to actually have a weekly session with Rabbi Yashav every Motzei Shabbos.
Wow!
I did that for about 13 months. And
just to present Shailos?
Yeah, so what happened was how this started. So I would go regularly to present Shailos. So it was Thursday. I was often there Thursday evening. I would by Thursday evening discussing different Shailos in Hilchos Shabbos, and I mentioned a Shaila about Rav Moshe's chumrah on Shabbos clocks. So I mentioned to him. So, and what Yashav thought about it. No such Ramesha. So I said, Ramesha writes that he's Asher Shabbos clocks. He would even answer it for lights, but because the Klaisos already know heter, he doesn't want to do that, but otherwise he would, Ramesha writes it. And there's no such Ramesha. He said it with such, who am I? I was like, I walked out, and go back to yeshiva, and I start rummaging through my notes, and Moshe said it, but it wasn't. Now it's in the Igros Moshe, right. But in those years it wasn't in the new volume yet. It was the MTJ used to have Eretz Yisroel used to put out 4 times a year a book that's called the Kol would put out Chedushei Halachos for Moshe and others one Kuntras. It's called Torah Hara. I think it was called Torah Hara. So in there was this piece of Moshe wrote about Shabbos clocks. Like I said, later on it was a bigger piece that was put into the Igros Moshe. So I saw it there. Okay, I have to show it to them, but how do I have it? I made calls all over, trying to find someone that had it. I remembered that Gabriel Beer, who was the father of today Eli Beer from Hatzalah. It was his father. He was a Sarim collector. I remember that he had it. I used to go to him for Shabbos. I remember I saw by him. I called him up. Yes, come pick it up. Friday morning, I ran to Beit Vegan where he lived. I picked it up, and I ran to Rabbi Yashiv's house. Now, Friday afternoon, everyone knows Rabbi Yashiv was totally inaccessible. He locked himself in Ol Sarah, the shul, to learn. The world could be an earthquake. You couldn't disturb him. So I came to the house. I said, you know the rough cans not to. So I said, Rebbetzin, he wanted to see this. I have to show it to him. So she said, okay. She made a mistake. She said to me, okay, leave it here, mark of what you want to show for Shabbos, and come Motzei Shabbos and you could discuss it with him. Now, Motzei Shabbos, it was Yedua, that was over Yasha's family time. Any of the relatives that wanted to visit with him, family in Yonim, Motzei Shabbos, everyone, it was closed, the door was closed. His brother-in-law, Aryeh Levine's son, who was very close to him, come every Motzei Shabbos and talk to him. So it was closed. She invited me to come into that door on Motzei Shabbos. That was her mistake. So anyway, I came back Motzei Shabbos, and I walked at the door. So she says to me, "You disturbed my husband's whole Shabbos menucha." I said, "What? Like what I do?" So she goes. So I walk into her. Yashav. He sits down. Says, very upset. Taka Ramosha says it. He had a number of Shailos on Ramosha's tshuva, very strong Shailos. I quickly sat down, wrote down all the. I remember he had six Shailos that he had on Ramosha's tshuva. I quickly wrote them down, and later I wrote it up in a letter. I sent it to Ramosha, to Rav Moshe. The Rav Moshe was thinking to respond back. But anyway, so I started doing it. So, and he explained why he felt differently. And Rebbetzin brought us tea, and I said, I'm going to have Malka. So I said to him, I have to ask the Rav. When I said to you, Rav Moshe said it, he was so, like, no. I said, Rav knows everything Rav Moshe says.
Yeah.
So he smiled, and he told me the most incredible story. Incredible story. He said he had heard of Rav Moshe, but he never saw anything from Rav Moshe. It was the first time in the 1950s, early 1950s, was it, or late 1940s, that Aaron came to Eretz Yisroel the first time, around Kotler. And he heard about Lakewood Rosh Yeshivas in town. He was staying in a hotel. I went to the hotel, and I was based in Yerushalayim, had a very, very difficult git in Shaila, very difficult Shaila. And I wanted to, and I wanted to hear what Aaron had to say. So I went to, and I came into this, and I presented Aaron the Shaila. So Aaron listens very intently, and then he says, there's only one person in the world that can handle the Shaila, Rav Moshe Feinstein. Come, Eretz Yisroel, we're going to call Rav Moshe Feinstein. He went to, that time there was a phone on the desk in his hotel room. He called, and he picked up and he called Rav Moshe. He was talking to Shaila Rav Moshe. Well, Yosha couldn't hear what Rav Moshe was saying. He was listening to Rav Moshe. And Aaron's standing there. Aaron was a zakein. Aaron just slept across the world. So Yosha was standing. So Yosha came and brought a chair. He should sit down. And Aaron didn't sit down. So he waited a few more minutes, and he felt maybe Aaron didn't realize the chair was there. So he took the chair and he pushed it a little bit against Aaron's leg, so he should feel the chair. So sit down. Aaron just ignored the chair. And Aaron was on the phone for about 40 minutes. And when he finished, he turned to Yosha, like he sat down with less keiches that he had, and he just collapsed into the chair. He told Yosha what Rav Moshe's kiddush was, what psak was in the Shaila. So Yosha asked him, okay, thank you so much. He said, but why didn't Rosh Yeshiva sit down? So he looked at him. Are you talking? I'm talking to Rav Moshe. I should talk to Rav Moshe Feinstein?
Wow.
Like, are you kidding? Like, how can I sit? He says, when he walked out of that room and he stopped and he cheshbon what Rav Aaron just told him, he realized what Rav Moshe must be. I made a commitment at that time that whatever Rav Moshe wrote, whatever I can get my hands on, I'm going to read. And he says, I became a baki in Igros Moshe, all Rav Moshe's, whatever Moshe wrote. And I knew that this Shaila, Rav Moshe never wrote about it. Well, he was right at the time. It wasn't in Igros Moshe.
Wow.
But that was the reverence that he had for Rav Moshe. And I remember I told this to Rabbi David Feinstein many, many years later. Yeah. He was so taken with that, so appreciative of that Yosha appreciated.
And we know that Rabbi Yashiv and Rabbi David had a tremendous relationship also. Rabbi Yashiv held he used to say, I think when Rabbi David would come, he would say that he had certain Shailos that he was waiting to discuss with Rabbi David.
I once asked Rabbi David, he was in Eretz Yisroel, to go to Rabbi Yashiv. He says, I go to him, disturb his learning. He's always learning. Why should I go disturb him? But it ended up, he held him. But Rabbi David was so taken with this when I told him this thing, because how much of a reverence that Rabbi Yashiv had for Rabbi Moshe. Wow. But that was it. So that incident, that going that first time, and first of all, Rabbi Yashiv gave me this letter. The mistake that the Stipler made was he gave me back the letter. So every time the next year and a half that I'd go to Bnei Brak and I'd go to the house, it was very hard to get to the Stipler.
But you had that letter.
I always said the letter. They always let me in because of the letter. So I used that letter again and again and again, to go in. But I never felt like, when I'm taking their time. I felt like because I was gaining so much from it, and I was paskening Shailos for so many people and so many incredible, And then I started recording it. So, but this was always done just for me, to share to Rabbi Naiman, to share with my chaverim, people that brought Shailos to. Never. This was like a hobby. It became my hobby.
Right.
And without any intention of doing anything further about it. But what happened is that I was zocheh to be one of the 3 designated drives for Rabbi Yaakov, and I would drive, Yaakov, and everything. I'd get a call. I'd come running from Queens with my car and drive.
So you were learning yeshiva Chavetz
Chaim in Queens.
And Rabbi Yaakov was Rosh Yeshiva in Tarvadastan?
No, then he was in Muncie. He was already retired. He was retired. It was Sof Yamav. But he had a few drivers. So I was one of the designated drivers, and I would get a call. Yaakov was going here to a chasana, to this, to some, to. So I would get to go. And so whenever I came, I would drive him. They used to have, I used to have a comfortable car, and I had an armrest. And I used to put the old tape recorders, maybe you don't even remember that, but those little cassette recorders. Yeah,
Sure.
I'm dating you, but you remember that?
Yeah, I remember those. Okay. You're talking about the flat ones?
The flat ones,
that had like the 6 buttons?
Yeah, exactly.
Right?
Got a little cassette.
Pause, play.
Exactly,
record.
right.
Yeah.
So
It's kind of bulky.
So I used to put it underneath the armrest, and I would talk to Rabbi Yaakov while I was driving. And it was always clear tapes, and I had a lot of tapes. I gave it to many members of the family. I gave it to them many years later. But anyway, so one particular time, I still remember I was driving Rabbi Yaakov to Washington Heights for the Breuer's Levaya, for Rabbi Breuer's Levaya. So in the car, and we started talking about Shidduchim, and Rabbi Yaakov just began to. His heart just began to open up his heart. It was fascinating. He talked about his own personal challenges of his Rebbetzin. His first Rebbetzin was Nifteres, and then the years that he was single. It was 4 years till he remarried his Rebbetzin, second Rebbetzin. And the second Rebbetzin took such good care of him. He always credited, the family credited his Arichas Yamim to her. The second. Right. So he told me something incredible. He told me that that he had made a decision when his wife was Nifteres. He was 64, and he had one son. His youngest son, Rabbi Ram Zechron Levracha, was still single, and he felt that my job right now is to marry off my son before I take care of myself. Mm-hmm. So I said, everything that the yeshiva does in life is based on a chazal. What chazal did you base it on? He said, on a pasuk. I said, pasuk. He said, yeah, that Avram first went to find a wife for Yitzchak. Before he went and married, his lady married Keturah, he married others. He first wanted to find it. So he first wanted to take care of Yitzchak. So I said, the yeshiva bases his anhaga on a pasuk in Chumash. So he smiled and he said, but I made a mistake. It was a toast. I should have taken care of myself first. And I said, why does the yeshiva say that? So he said something incredible. He said, because the 4 years that I was, he called it Ben Gavra Lagavra, Ben Baj. I went down beruchi, bekoichi, ubegufi. I went down in every way, and I never recouped it. So I said, the Rishiva's married already 25 years, the second Rebbe. I never was able to recoup what I lost during those years. It was difficult years. So I should have taken care of myself first, which is like, anyway, other things like that. He told me so many other things, and they were so personal that I totally forgot the tape was there. We're pulling into Washington Heights, and all of a sudden, click. And Yaakov said, what was that? I said, I bet Mechila Yeshiva. I always tell the Yeshiva, I had to tape the conversation. I'm going to erase the tape. I'm going to take it out and erase it. So he didn't say anything to me first. And then a few minutes later, he says to me, you can leave it. He says, since the time that I'm Olal Daiti, I have my seichel, I never said anything that I had to take back. So we can leave it, whatever I said. I don't have to take back anything I said that I have charata on. Mm-hmm. So he let me keep it. So, but the tape, so I tried everything to make sure. So anyway, so when I got back to Muncie, and I was driving, took the Rishiva to the door, I said, I have so many things, hashkafahs and dastor from the Rishiva. I said, as a joke, I said, I could fill a whole sefer with the Rishiva's hashkafahs. So he smiled and I left. The next day I get a call from one of the people who was to care of him. Yaakov wants me to come to see him. He wants to see me. Now, I was taken aback because Rabbi Yaakov, whenever I'm coming, you come all the way from Queens, Tyra, what are you coming to shop an old man? He'd always push me away. Here, calling me to come, middle of the day, and I realized he probably had charata that I have that tape. So I brought the tape with me to give it back to him if he wanted. I come in, and I come into the house. Rishiva wanted to see me? He says, yes. You said something to me at the end about hashkafahs. I have so many hashkafahs I can make a sefer. B'nai Torah don't ask Shailos from gedolei. They ask Shailos on a chicken, on a mara. They don't ask hashkafahs anymore from gedolei Torah. I want you to write up whatever you heard from me. I'll help you put it into a sefer.
Even halacha, you had no problem?
So we didn't, it was more like hashkafah. That's what started. The first time I even, it was a joke. Like, what? And I said, okay, and I'll work with you. I went home, I started saying, I have so much from so many gedolim, it's a shame. Now, in those years, there was no sfarm for the yeshiva, Shlomo Zalman, there was nothing. There was nothing printed. And I had all these psukim from them. So I jumped on a plane, I went to Eretz Yisroel. And I went to all the gedolim. Stapel was no longer alive. I went to everybody and asked them, they knew me, that I've been by them so many times, can I put this in a sefer? Would you work with me? Some were very, very, 100%. Rabbi Yasha said to me, "You've been by me. I know that you're by Hasamka, you're a Nemon, but I'm not gonna. You don't have the time. They want to read what I wrote from him, but you should find a Gavur Rabbah that will read it over. That makes sure."
But the principle of writing over what he said to you is fine with.
He said he's fine with, but as far as he's not going to do it, because it's built Torah for him. But I have to find a Gavur Rabbah to do it. But he meant obviously Yiddish Talmud Chacham. But I did better than that. One of the people that I developed a credible kesher to, I guess really because of my father was so a Talmud of his, was Rabbi Chaim Aryeh in Torah. He used to be the mashgiach in Chafetz Chaim before he opened up Torah for 25 years. My father was a Talmud of his then. So he became a real escarvist, very close to him. And I went with him hundreds and hundreds of Shailos. So I went to Rav Steinberg, and he said, 100% I'll work it out. So I said, would the yeshiva also agree to read over everything for everybody? Yes, 100%.
Really? Wow.
The Akar Tov that I have to Rav Steinberg will never be able to repay. He read over my sefer 3 times, cover to cover.
This very sefer?
No, the first one.
The original volume.
Original one.
Which was published when?
Published in 1986.
And it was obviously much smaller than this.
Smaller than this. That had 999 Shailos, Kol Dalcha Kishnok, and hashkafah. Total of 999. This has about 2,000. Wow. But it's also written in a different format.
And this has hashkafah also, right?
There hashkafah, much more. There was much more there. And what we did there in that sefer, so I wrote it up, and then I had Rav Chaim. He was going from Merrick to Eretz Yisroel. He read it throughout the entire plane ride, made dozens and dozens of hours, maybe hundreds of hours. I got back to the thing, I redid it, and then on the way back from Eretz Yisroel to here,
you gave him the revised.
I gave him the revised thing. He read it again, made more corrections, and said, "Don't put this one in. This is the." It was not just it's halacha, yes, now, or sometimes this comes from this source, that source, which I didn't have. But sometimes don't put the shayla. It's a little too, it's going to be too controversial. And then when I finished everything, he did it he read it a third time. So I have an incredible amount of cars to talk to him. So that sefer came out. Zundel Berman published it at the time in 1986, and it came out. He printed 5,000 copies. He printed in Eretz Yisroel. He said 25. He's going to do 25 there and 25 will bring to America. But it went so quickly that he only brought in 1,500 to America. It was gone in Eretz Yisroel. It came there. It was gone before I had a chance. It didn't even make the farm stores. It went very quickly. Because of the Yashav of Shlomo Zalman, except for Shmir Shabbos Kol Chasa, who knew what Rav Shlomo Zalman's psakim? Everyone knew. So I got hundreds of letters. Both l'shvach l'ganai, people criticizing that Yashav never said it, Moshe never said it, this one never said it, or fantastic. It was like back and forth. So I said, so Zunel wanted to reprint it right away. I said, no, I want to incorporate all these things into those. And then life got busy, and opened the shul, and it was busy as a rav, and life of family, and involved in so many things, Sarchei Tzibur, that it just, the joke in my family was that every summer I said, okay, I'm going away to the country. I had a briefcase with the sefer, with all my letters that I got and all my things. I took it with me. I'll sit down over the summer and I'll do it. I always brought it back, the same briefcase, unopened. Like it was never. And then what happened is that the Sfarim started coming out. Yashiv's grandchildren, his nephews and his nieces, and Shlomo Zalman, hundreds and hundreds of these Sfarim. And I said, so it's sort of like who needs it, And then someone calls me up, a Yiddish Talmud Chacham who lives in Lakewood. He said, by the way, he's a big Baal halacha, and he sends me a list of the Sfarim that he took out from all of Shlomo Zalman Yashiv's families that put out Sfarim that have the bottom where they got it from Divrei Chachamim, from my sefer. 313 quotes. So I called Rav Zilberstein. This goes back a few years ago. I said, Yitzhak, I don't understand. When I buy a sefer of the Yashav Shlomo Zalman's grandson, the things I heard from the Zayda, but they quote my sefer. Like what's? He starts laughing. It shows that they all trust you. Like what? Yeah, it's all trusted. Great, great. No. Then he told me I quoted you once, and he quoted me. Where in the sefer he quoted my sefer also. So I said, okay, I really have to do it. But it's required. Now I want to go through all the sfarim that came out from all the different poskim to go through and see
if it's consistent with what you heard.
Exactly right. No, it's like when I wrote a thing.
And what was it? Would you say it was by and large?
It was by and large, but not just by and large. For example, I wrote a thing, one particular sefer that posek, a big posek in America, who passed away just a few years ago, wrote, Moshe never said something like that, would never say something like that. I heard from Moshe. So now we went through, there's 2 sperm that came out from Moshe afterwards that has that shaila, not for me, that someone else asked him, that's brought down. And then the Shevet HaLevi has the same psak. Rav Shlomo Zalman, is one of his sperm quotes that Rav Shlomo Zalman told his nephew that Rav Moshe told him the same thing. So all of a sudden, it had teeth to it, a life to it. This required an incredible amount of work, and who could do that work? And then COVID came. And I almost, was not here. I was as close to the next world as you can get. And Nisim, my name is Chaim, was added to me.
Right, sure.
So what happened was when I came home, the hospital, I was 6.5 weeks in the hospital. Then I came home, and I was downstairs in a room that they set up for me. I couldn't walk at the time. And after, it was about 3 or 4 weeks, I was home. Finally, I was able to go upstairs. My study is upstairs. My wife said to me, why don't you go into your study for a little bit? And I just didn't, it wasn't ready. I just went to, go into your study. So I went into my study, I sat down at my desk. I have, Baruch Hashem, a very big library, a few thousand sfarim. And all of a sudden, as I sat down at my desk, straight center, I see my Divrei Chachamim in the shelf. And I look at it and I said, Kadosh Baruch Hu, maybe you gave me back my life so that I could finally do this safer, get this safer out. I almost would not have had a choice. It never would be printed again because this was something that was done years ago. I used to get every year a few dozen requests from people. Can I get a copy? Is there any way I can make a photocopy? Kadosh Baruch, maybe this is the opportunity. Maybe this is what I need to do now. And so I reached out to a few people. One was a chaver of mine, a big Talmid Chacham, and I said, listen, this is my idea, this is my dream, this is what I got to do. And we spent the better part of over 2 years, almost 2.5 years, starting the safer, took it out, started from scratch. So rather than a Shaila Tshuva form, we did it more of to make it a little bit more readable, more accessible, the heading of what's about. It makes it just easier to read. It's a little bit, it reads better. And then we went through every Shaila, both halacha and hashkafah, looked at everything we could find that was printed in the last 50 years to see if anybody corresponds. And there's a tremendous amount of stuff that we found. The ha'oros here are extensive. On some of the Shailos, I can have 2 pages of ha'oros on one Shaila to show how much teeth went into this, how much background is into this particular Shaila. And then while doing this, I said to myself, wait a second, Rabbi Neumann, who was the person who got me into this whole thing, he was nifter. He left 10, 20,000 Shailos that he heard directly from all the gedolei. I said, it's a shame, it's all lost. So we hired somebody to go through, everything was computerized, pick out. But not things that he quoted that I heard from Rabbi Bluth or Rabbi First, or Talmidim Rabbi Moshe who told him certain things, only what he heard directly. And then we sifted out of those, there were a few thousand of them. What's over the socher? He had a lot of things in that he quoted me that I told him. But pick out things that were fascinating, that are not written all over, that people want to hear, and we incorporated those as well. The ones from Moshe, I think I added another 115 shaylos from Moshe that he heard directly that are incredible. Of course, from my Rebbe Rav Henoch, hashkafahs that I thought were just so, eye-opening. As a matter of fact, one of the editors, we did it to get this thing done, it's a bracha. I published my first book in ArtScroll in September, but that's an English book, a combination of articles, V'chiza called Rays of Hope. Baruch Hashem has really made the rounds, although people have told me how much chiza they got from it. But that's ArtScroll, that's what they do. They don't really do Hebrew Sfarim, except Moshe and David or David Cohen. But I spoke to Gedolei, he thought that this was something that really would be an incredible addition to Klal Yisrael. But he said, I'm not equipped to do the editing, and we'll do the publishing and the printing and distributing. So we picked out an incredible company called Aryeh Zev, became a very good chaver of mine, Rav Shimon Shemanowitz, who's the head of it, and they were professionals, and they worked on this for a better part of over a year, and made comments as well, and really helped us go through and sift the. So he had commented to me at one point that, like, the hashkafah, that he didn't really know Rav Henoch Leibowitz, Chaim, and just seeing some of the hashkafahs from Rav Henoch that are so eye-opening, he said, well, I hope everybody reads it. You know, like, so we picked out the best of the best, and that's what we put together, and it came out to be, it's close to 2,000, hashkafah, Shailos.
So I wanted to ask you quickly in the few minutes that we have left, what interesting Shiloh could you share with us? Give us a little teaser of a fascinating Shiloh that you have in here.
Let me give you a fascinating Shiloh that is both shows the godless and halacha, and maybe even more the godless of the tzidkus and the righteousness of the gedolei Yisrael. One particular Shiloh that's in the book. I just happened to be in the right place at the right time. There was a girl, a Baal Tshuva from Neve Yerushalayim, and a boy, a Baal Tshuva from Or Sameach. And Shidduch made, and they were engaged, they were getting married. It was 2 weeks before the wedding, and the boy's father came to, not from it all, no shaykhs to anything, but came to spend the last 2 weeks for his son and come for the wedding and get to spend a little quality time with his son. And he comes and he meets Ramel Weinbach, and in the discussion it came out that he's a Kohen, which means the chassan's a Kohen. But the Kala, her mother was a Gioris. She was, all of a sudden,
it's a problem.
A real problem, 2 weeks before the chasana. So Mendel Weinbach ran to the Rav of Yerushalayim, Zolti, Zolti, and presented the Shiloh to him. He said, Shvera Shiloh, give me 3 days. On the third day in the morning, Mendel Weinbach was woken up by a ramkol, a car going around with announcing everyone to come to Levaya in the morning, Rav Zolti's Levaya. He had a heart attack, he was nifter. Zolti went to Levaya, and Zolti's son came over to him at Levaya and said, please come to the house after Levaya, I have something for you.
Told Rav Weinbach.
Weinbach comes to the house, and there's a letter for him on the table, addressed to him, a tshuva. I think it was 11-page tshuva, if I remember correctly. And lengthy tshuva, and he's matir. They should go ahead. But was this final? Was this, like, he didn't know? Like, it wasn't, Zolti Nebuch's not here. So went to Rabbi Yashav. Comes to Rabbi Yashav, and he tells the Shai, he shows the tshuva. Yashav reads it. Now, he held the Velt of Rav Zolti, but you're asking me to Shaila, I hold that it's also they can't get married. So what do you do with this chas and kala? What do you do? So he said, okay, the only one person that we can ask the Shaila to, and if he paskins mutter, not only will I accept it, I'll leave him Masada Kedusha. And that's what Moshe Feinstein. Now, okay, with America, how are we going to get to, we need a shliach. I happen to have been standing at Rabbi Yashav talking over Shailos with him. He said, he's the shliach. He'll be the shliach. I said, shliach, Rebbe. I was in Chavetz Chaim. I was going home in 2 weeks. The Zman was ending, but I'm giving a share. I'm like, I can't, what do you mean? Like, you're going the shliach. You're the shliach. Go. I ran back to Chavetz Chaim. I went to my shkiach or Kanarik. I said, Rebbe, I just got, told him that happened. Rabbi Yashav, Paskins, you're going, you go. I'll take over your share, you go. I threw things together, ran to the airport, got a ticket, and ran. As I landed in Kennedy, I took a cab straight to Ramoshe's house. The minyan was starting, I got to Ramoshe's house. Walk in, so, I told him what's going on the Shaila, and Yosha told me to come, and I take out the tshuva, to give him the tshuva. He pushes it away. I look at it. He's asked questions. Father from, or not from, the grandfather, and where is she from? So I said, I had the background. The mother was from, the grandmother was from this town in Germany. So Moshe says, mutalach. So mutalach. Moshe's shita is no cheskes Kohen today. And Moshe said that town in Germany where the grandmother came from, they were mostly Reformed. They were 99% Yidden. They were just, many of them were like Reformed, became Reformed.
So it broke the chain of Kuna.
and she's not really yours because Mistam she's Jewish anyway, because her grandmother came from that place in Germany, which is Mistam. She's Apirov. She's Jewish. They just were very like reformed. So but
so she might not even be a Giyuris.
Giyuris, and I'm going mutter.
Wow.
So, okay, so I'm gonna go. So I'm leaving.
You need places for that. Wow.
That's right, Moshe. So I'm about to leave. Go to my house. So where are you going? I said I'm gonna go home. I just got back. I'm gonna go home and I'll call. Kasakala waiting. Call right now.
Rav Moshe told you.
Take the phone and call. There was no cell phones those days. Call right now. I take Rav Moshe's phone. I called up. Psak, okay. Anyway, Baruch Hashem, they got married. Now, Yosha was a Psak Dushan. So that wasn't the end of the story. First of all, it's a great story. Wow, what a chiddush, what unbelievable. But
did Rav Moshe have a look at Rav Zolti's
No,
tshuva?
because he held, this is what he held, and that was it. Eliyashiv didn't agree to that psak of this Kaskas Kohen. He didn't agree to much of psak. But so anyway,
and yet he was Masada Kedushin by the wedding.
So it was maybe 9 or 10 months later. I had a chance to go back to Eretz Yisroel, and I come in straight to Rav Eliyashiv's house. I always did. And I come in, and I walk in. Oh, the shliachs do the shliach. So I said, Lilmod ani tzarich, Rebbe. I have to understand. I understand Ramesh is the place like hador, Makabo Ramesh says. But why did the Rav feel that's Misadik Dushin? Rav doesn't hold it, that psak. So he said to me as follows. He said, because there's a shtickle tumul about it. I'm afraid that 25, 30 years from now,
There'll be motzi laws on
they'll
the
have
couple.
a child, right? They will have a child that's ready to a chasana, and they're going to say, no, because maybe yichus, there's something with the yichus that we're not so sure. We had heard something. When they find out that Eliyashiv was Stakdushin, no one's going to have any Shailos. That's why I did it. So that no one down the road, no one will have any possible error against the shidduch. That is, these are the gedolim that I was in awe of, both in learning from them, halacha, hashkafah. As we see here, there's so many things in the Sefer that are going to be eye-opening, I really believe. But not learn from them on huggers.
So I want to say, I mean, you put out here a sefer of a couple of thousand tshuvas. Really, what I want to read is your book on your zechroinus of your encounters with the gedolim. That should be a book. That's a book based on our conversation for the last 45 minutes. There's a book there.
Yeah, definitely. But
about your encounters with gedolim.
A lot of them have in here.
A lot of it is in here.
In the Shailos, I did a little bit like that, but not
a little bit of the historical context.
A little, not as much as, but a little bit.
Now I know in this sefer you did not include tshuvas from Rabbi Chaim Aryeh.
Right.
And who else did you not include yet?
So in this sefer, I used whatever was done the previous generation,
right.
and things that I had even that I didn't include in the sefer, and of course the things Rabbi Neumann I got from him,
right.
But and a little bit of Reb David, very little, and very little Reb Chaim. David Feinstein, very little Reb Chaim. But in the last 25 years, the two people that I went to mostly was for halacha was Reb David Feinstein and Reb Chaim Kanievsky, and hashkafah, a tremendous amount to Aaron Leibsteinman. I did not put those into the sefer.
So is that a chelik beis at some point?
We started working now.
We're working on it already.
We started working on it, putting it together, and we hope Hashem, and be able to.
I just hope it takes shorter than this.
Believe me, not as much as I hope. Not as much as I hope.
But I want to, you could be mavarich ala mugmar, as they say, when you put out a sefer like this. It's an incredible achievement for B'nai Torah of all types. It's an einig ruchni to go through. It's enjoyable.
Absolutely.
Shailos across the spectrum, and it's written so clearly. And like you mentioned, Reb Shimon Shemanowitz and his team at Mechain Ali Zayis, they put out a beautiful product here.
Right.
And
I'm indebted to ArtScroll and to everybody.
And to the ArtScroll team for bringing it to the finish line.
Right.
And there's so much here. You can't go through it al regel achas. I'm speaking of myself. There's so much more to go through, but we look forward to doing so, and we encourage viewers to go out and get the copies before it sells out. Just like your first volume that eventually went out of print.
Right.
People should get a hold of it. I think they'll benefit from it tremendously. And we're grateful to you that despite the passage of years and the amount of work that it took, that you were able to finally see this to fruition. And we bench you with continued hatzlacha in your abatzas hatayra, in your writing of svarim and books that inspire people, and of course good health.
Amen. That's why I just want to come. That's why the ha'ora section here, which is significant, we called it Tziyonei Chaim. And the reason I did that was because the added name that I was given was Chaim.
Right.
And
Was that Rabbi Chaim who said to add your name? Where did that come from?
That came from Rabbi David Feinstein. Rabbi Chaim.
David.
Yeah, David Feinstein. Yeah. So the name, like I felt that the whole kind of thing what pushed me now is, like I said, post-COVID, realizing I almost never would have had that opportunity. It would have been lost forever. Because he gave me an opportunity. I want to, every time someone learns the Sefer, every time I look at the Sefer and it's Yonei Chaim, remember this great nace that Kosh Baruch Hu did for me. And I hope that, it's a schus for Klal Yisrael as well.
Amen. Thank you again for being here.
Thank you so much.